Welcome everybody again to the Enhancing Clinical Practice and Outcome stream of SNOMED CT Expo 2024. My name is Rory Davidson. I am the Chief Digital Information Officer at SNOMED International, and I'll be moderating today's session. All questions will be answered at the end of the presentation. If you're online, please add them to the Q&A tool, and we'll ask you to put your hands up when we get to the end of the presentation. So I'm extremely pleased to introduce Keith Campbell, honored guest to present to us collaborative pathways to quality, SNOMED CT's role in integrated knowledge management. Keith, over to you.
All right, thank you. First, let me just comment that this has been a fabulous place to come on vacation, and I'm emphasizing that because I'm on vacation. I am not, as part of a disclaimer, I am not here officially representing any government organization or making any policy statements. So I just want to make sure that's clear. Thank you. So I want to talk a little bit about data quality and its impact on patient safety, and that's really been a focus of mine for the last few years. And that achieving safe and effective care requires understanding the context in which the information is being provided. You know, as in the last presentation, if you just have a mood statement that is missing the context of when that was asked and what the significance of it is, it's a little challenging to make sure that you interpret it properly. And finally, we have all these different information sources that we need to be able to integrate them in order to provide that comprehensive context across the different organizations, and then we can have a little bit of question, answer, and discussions. So data quality can impact patient safety, and this may seem obvious, but if it's so obvious, I just don't understand why we're not really addressing some of these data quality issues that we have. And frequently when we'll have a data quality incident, the first question is going to ask is, well, did anybody die? Okay, and you know, if the answer is, well, no, then, oh, okay, fine, we can move on. Which is opposed to saying, well, but there was a near miss, there was a data quality problem, and there could be a future near miss, and why can't we do better? So here's an example, and this is a you know, an amalgamated case example, but you know, let's say a patient was out on a run, and as part of that, they experienced some chest pain, and they end up going to the nearest local hospital. Now, not every local hospital has an intensive care unit, but they came in and they were admitted to the ER there. So they had some initial assessment and testing, and at Hospital A, they ordered a high sensitivity troponin test, which sounds like a good test to order, to evaluate possible myocardial infarction, and the high sensitivity troponin levels are measured as 49 picograms per milliliter. Their oxygen levels went down. The care team determines that they need to be transferred to an intensive care unit. They're sent to Hospital B, a larger one, and so now we have an issue of transferring health records from one organization to another. As part of that, there's a data transmission error. Now, I don't mean a data transmission error in the sense that some electron from outer space came and hit the you know, the TCP/IP connection and caused a disturbance in a bit. Frequently, these data transmission errors are programmed at the source, you know, so that they're inherent issues in corrupting data in the data chain due to specific known errors in the data stream. And in this case, the hospital, the test method information was lost, and the specific information about whether it was a high sensitivity or a regular troponin level was lost. And so then the clinician at the receiving institution has to figure out, is this in fact, you know, can I treat the patient based on these tests, or do I need to repeat these tests to make sure that I have information from a laboratory that I can trust? And so then the impact is at the other hospital, there's the opportunity for delays in treatment, misdiagnosis and similar. In this particular case, they weren't sure how to interpret the test. They decided to err on the side of caution. They went ahead and anticoagulated the patient with heparin and did continued testing at their own institution. And then based on that, they determined that the patient did not have a myocardial infarction, but in fact had myocarditis, prepared the patient to get ready for discharge. And however, pre-discharge blood work showed that they had thrombocytopenia, which is a side effect of the unnecessary treatment with the heparin. And so that increases cost complications and morbidity to the patient, and redundant testing, redundant therapy, and medications. And these kind of errors are prevalent today. And we have, on the next slide here, we did a little test, and we wanted to understand how some of the information flows. This has been published in JAMIA. We took two different hospitals in the U.S., Children's Health and University of Nebraska Medical Center. And they both used the exact same health record, and they went through a health information exchange that is provided by the provider of that health record. And there's a number of issues that come up. One is that you lack a little bit of traceability. In this case, the order number is not retained as it moves from one organization to the other. And so when it comes into the system, they've lost, sort of that comparability of that information. Second, even though on the origination of the test, the specimen source was indicated, the specimen source was dropped as part of the health information exchange. And again, these aren't theoretical examples. This really happened. And it's actually very common within our health information exchange that incomplete information and inconsistent transformation of information occurs. And then next, again, they both use the same EHR vendor, but neither of them captured the test method, which might have helped you know, oh, well, it was using this method, so therefore I'm confident was a high sensitivity troponin as opposed to a regular troponin. And then finally, they have different LOIN codes. So as part of the information exchange, even though there was one LOIN code at the source, in the transmission process, again, it's not an electron coming from outer space as a random probability. It's actually something that could have been quality assured for and prevented and measured so that we have metrics about the quality of our data. And one of the things we find in the US is that, and I think it's probably true generally, is that we don't really pay attention and have metrics about the quality of our clinical data, even though it's our healthcare, and it could have impacts on being treated or having a really adverse outcome. So having this safe and effective care requires context. I've mentioned LOINC and LOINC's role in this. Certainly having the ability to encode the laboratory tests is what's LOINC's role here. That these errors that were occurred, they're not LOINC's fault. They're the fault of, the implementers that have taken this information and tried to work with it. And then there's other information that's commonly included in SNOMED. And so in the US, we have the US core data elements for interoperability. And those are requiring that certain fields be filled out with LOINC codes, other fields be filled out with SNOMED codes, including, what are the quantitative data results, what is the specimen source site, other information like that. And then finally, there's other clinical context that we lose in the transmission, and there's an opportunity actually to try to retain that clinical context so that we can have better information throughout the healthcare ecosystem to make sure that we optimize the use of our tests, make sure that we have the best real-world data we can, to use that real-world data in training sets and other things for machine learning that we might want to use for the care of patients. So there's lots of reasons why we want to improve the quality of this data. And so what we're working towards is essentially trying to get integrated knowledge, not to have a number of silos, not to have, this part of the test is represented in SNOMED, this other part of the test is represented in LOINC, another part of the test is represented using some other standard. And they come out at different release cycles, and they have different representations and similar. And we've been making progress towards integrated knowledge. So I can't claim exclusivity of this idea. The SNOMED LOINC integration agreement that you've been hearing quite a bit about at this meeting and at previous meetings is an example of the type of activity that we're trying to sponsor and foster. And so as part of that, we want to work on a device extension so that that device extension would have information about laboratory tests, in vitro diagnostic tests, so that you might have better reliability of transmission of that data from point A to point B. And then a goal is that this type of collaboration can increase quality and outcomes. If we have standard reference material that different organizations can use when they're programming their HL7 interfaces to exchange data from one laboratory system to the other, and when we identify that there's changes that occur, we can validate that against a reference standard to know that, in fact, are we using the right sample types for this test? Are we using the right methods that are being reported? Are we, in fact, getting a complete record for this test? And start to develop metrics about the quality of the data so that we can answer the question, why should I trust this data? So another number of groups we want to have participate in this, regulatory bodies, laboratories, public health agencies, and device manufacturers. So that, you know, for example, if the device manufacturer provided the record for their device as part of marketing it, says, okay, this is our device, this is the right way you should encode you know, the test results, here's how you should encode the specimen information. Certain tests are only allowed to use certain devices. So like, you know, you can't use a cotton swab for certain types of bacterial test results because cotton is bacteriostatic and would cause the organism to be killed, and you'd get a false negative. And so you need to use a Dacron swab or calcium alginate swab. So there might be a list of what are the approved sample types that you can use with this particular test. And then to accomplish this, we need to have some aspects of collaborative tooling. You know, we need to be able to get SNOMED in an environment and LOINC in an environment and a device extension in an environment, and be able to have it in a way such that a device manufacturer could fill out the records for their own tests and then contribute that information to entities that can roll it up and make it available, you know, potentially through SNOMED or through LOINC or through other organizations, through the National Library of Medicine. You know, I'm less concerned with who that is, but we need the ability to have that be someone, right, as opposed to, you know, just letting silos continue to exist. So here, this is just a little vignette video of our demonstration progress to date. And the first thing is we have to have an environment that collects all of this information together. And I think something's going to show up here soon. The timer is moving now. Okay. Yeah. So, no. Okay. So then, you know, we have a concept navigator, and then within this concept navigator, we have the ability to see all of the different health concepts that are organized together. Don't be too picky about the content up here. We're focusing on the tooling. This is not a conversation about, is this the best modeling possible? But you know, this is the home screen that we're trying to have an aspect of terminology modeling. Now, let's say we're trying to support testing for mpox, right? So that was, for a while, we were on alert that that might be the next pandemic. And so we need to do some work trying to make sure that mpox testing is standardized and reported in a way that we can then make use of that to fight a public health emergency. So we've got search for a concept for mpox result. Here we're searching for the mpox virus itself. There's different ways to test for viruses. You know, you can look for the DNA, you can look for the RNA, you can look for certain protein markers or other things. And so that's one thing of trying to look for the information that you might want to be including, and different tests will look for different things, and we need to know that. Here, there's going to be different swabs or sample containers. You know, again, we need to know that it's not a cotton swab, I presume, and And then finally here, we're looking at, there's a molecular test, a Q-Mpox molecular test that is a test provided by a particular manufacturer. So this is a level of granularity much more specific than, for example, LOINC, which would just say that we have the Mpox test. Now, here's the integration part. So we bring up the ability to create a laboratory IVD device record. And then as part of that IVD device record, we would have an ability to give information about it, like what is the device, what is the target. And so we'll go through, here's the specific test that we're gathering information for, the Q-Mpox molecular test. And then an analyte. So for now, we'll just put in that it's some sort of Mpox result that we're looking to determine. And then it's target. What is it targeting? Is it targeting the RNA of the virus? Is it targeting the DNA of the virus? Is it targeting some other property of the virus? These things are going to be important in public health decision-making with regards to that data. And then finally, bringing this all together into a comprehensive record. Here we can put a set of values for the allowed test results. And so here it's creating a value set. It's not going to the Value Set Authority Center to do that. The intent is that we're able to do this all within an integrated environment, have the ability to add new concepts as we need to, use existing concepts as we can, create value sets, and then be able to provide those to other groups. That's listing the allowed samples, and then done. We now have a device record, and that this then provides a laboratory knowledge base, if you will, that is integrated and based on the terminologies. Our intent is to make sure that this uses a common format. We've been working at HL7 to try to get some standards for collaborative authoring and tooling for knowledge bases, and so on. So we need the next slide. I need to push the button. So a device extension is one example, but the idea is that today we have these silos or isolated areas of bits of information that we really would like to have integrated. And a first step is trying to have a shared knowledge base about the parts of these systems that overlap. And that as we then go forward, that shared knowledge base can get bigger and bigger as we have more and more common capability, and that the different groups can then focus on just their unique aspects. And so, for example, the international drug model with the extensions for the different countries is an example of trying to accomplish that with a goal that the additions from each of the countries gets very small, the burden for doing it is very low, and the value that's provided is very integrated and high. And so, as I've mentioned along, we've been doing a lot of progress. We've been creating use cases and reference materials. We've been working with HL7 to create some standards. We've created some specifications for what a device extension might look like. And we've been working to collaborate on implementation. And I've had a number of HL7 connectathons there. And so we want to break down all these information silos, expand shared knowledge through pilot demonstrations. Device extension is our first one, but the parallels with the drug extension and others should be pretty clear, and that we want to work to continue on developing collaborative open source tooling to support this work. So, thank you.
Thank you very much, Keith. Again, fascinating. I've got too many questions, but I'll open the floor for questions. Please raise your hand if you'd like to raise any questions, and we'll give you a microphone. Gonna get the opportunity again, right? Okay, so it's my opportunity.
Okay.
So, just a curious question from point of view of kind of the US versus the global. How do you think this sits with kind of a global setting? And does it mean you need more specificity or less specificity, or how does this work across that kind of larger scale?
Collaboration in general, or
The
the
particular
specifics of a
concepts.
device
Yeah,
extension?
the devices, sorry. Yeah.
So just like in drugs, many of the devices are marketed across multiple countries and multiple jurisdictions. So I think that the more detail you have, so you need to have the abstract ability to roll these up and be able to say, for decision support, it was an mpox test done, right? But you might need to know that in one jurisdiction, these mpox tests use this methodology by this vendor, which might be quite different than the sensitivity and specificity of a different set of mpox tests by a different vendor. And during COVID, we had that in spades, right? So we didn't, there were different tests that were contracted with different companies in different countries. And, the more information you have, the better public health decisions that you can make, the better you can respond to the pandemic, and the better safety you can provide for your citizenry.
Hi, Kim Fong from U.S. Natural Library of Medicine. So Keith, from the examples that you gave in your presentation, it seems that at least initially you'll be focusing on the in vitro diagnostic devices, right? Is that correct? Or
Yes.
so is there a plan to expand to other devices like implantables or other things?
I would hope that the environment would expand to that, but I'll just refer to my comment in the beginning that I am not representing an employer and I cannot make an official statement about where this is going to go.
But the initial focus will be the IVDs.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, so I have another question.
Okay.
How do you see this being? So like whenever we talk about extensions within SNOMED in our world, we talk about, right now we have the model of RF2 as a file that people download and use. How do you see this moving forward with either staying with the, the file distribution, or we're talking about service distribution? I mean, how do you see this in this model?
Well, I think that we need a logical model that represents a comprehensive representation. I mean, I think that's the bottom line. And I like to make a lot of analogies to how software development works and how open source software development works. And part of why it works, if you just take Java as an example, there's a specification for a comprehensive Java program that has a set of Java files, and there's a proper way of compiling them. I think that the RF2 spec is, 90–95% there. Right. So I don't think it's a huge change, but I do think there are some changes that are mandatory. Right. And part of that is relating to moving away from just representing terminological knowledge to actually being able to represent statements about patients that go beyond just a description logic definition. And also, going to universally unique identifiers instead of a proprietary code for representing it. I think that those are actually fairly low-hanging, those aren't big stretches. I think it should be something that is reasonably accomplishable.
Thank you.
Thanks. Dion McMurtry from CSIRO Australia. Thanks, Keith. I guess my question is about the use and implementation of the knowledge artifact that ends up being produced, and like who is the main audience or audiences that you would see actually getting that information and implementing it, and what way would they implement that?
So there's a variety, and I think that's part of the goal is that we want to have general purpose knowledge representation that isn't just for a EHR vendor, and isn't just for a healthcare provider organization, and isn't just for a regulatory body, and isn't just for a manufacturer. We need to try to have something that is collaborative across all of those different organizations so that the manufacturer can have easier access to the regulatory process through providing electronic data submissions. The regulator can have easier access to post-market surveillance for determining effectiveness of products and whether they should be issuing recalls and similar for that. The healthcare providing organization needs an ability to add content to their extension rapidly. During COVID, people, at the VA, they were adding their own codes to be representing positive and negative COVID tests because they needed to. The different organizations did, they worked hard. Many people went out and scraped the NHS's websites for all of their COVID content because I think they had the most COVID content out there. But the intent is that if we have a standardized exchange of, so you can zip up a software program by taking the directory of the zip files, a zip file of all of the directory of all the source code, and you can send it from one place to another, and they can pick it up and they can compile it, and then they can do what they need to do. We need to have it that kind of interoperability, that it's standard and routine, and that that in itself, it has to have an open foundation. Now, that doesn't mean that proprietary organizations can't build value on top of it, right? But, so think about the pharmacy, the drug knowledge bases today. We've got First Data Bank, we've got Microsmetics, we've got Metaspan. How common are they? They're not, right? Again, the distribution formats are all different. You end up getting a vendor lock, if you will, if you tightly couple your environment to any one of those systems. The switching costs are high. And so we need to make it in such a way that it democratizes, if you will, the ability to create a knowledge base and distribute it, but it also democratizes the ability to provide value that you can charge for and distribute it on top of it. So hope that was sort of what you were asking.
Yeah, no, it was.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Keith. I know that we're very interested in SNOMED International. With the community content stuff we do, we're following in the same direction. So we'll be speaking. Thank you very much. With that, we conclude these 6 sessions. Online delegates, the next sessions will start in an hour or so. Those who are here, lunch is available in the exhibition hall. Please check out the lightning talks and the e-posters there. And don't forget to visit all the exhibitors and play the passport game. I'm supposed to hold it up. Imagine that's what it looks like. Have fun, everybody.